It's one of those videos where we get to see Jesse Lee Peterson go against one of those woke people who love to cry and play victim. As I usually say, I am not going to talk anymore, so let us get into the video.
You are a diversity, equity, and inclusion leader. Can you explain to me what is that and how does that work?
Yeah, so that means that, again, my focus, my learning laboratory is the workplace. So I roll into organizations and I ensure that Black people, that people of color, that women, that gender minorities, that sexual minorities, that people with disabilities are being treated respectfully and appropriately and fairly within the context of the workplace. Protected categories are protected for a reason. And a lot of people are, when people are actually keen on hiring folks from these demographics, because that's the first hurdle, a lot of organizations don't have any of these folks represented. If they actually do hire folks from underrepresented demographics, a lot of people will hire and then tokenize, hire and then tell them to go sit down and shut up.
These people always have that look, whether they're black, white, blue, green, yellow, whatever the color is, they always have a certain look. And as per usual, these people love to be victims and complain about everything as if they're in a victim Olympics. These people just want to complain about everything. She's complaining that if they hire people of color, then they tokenize them. Would you blame them for tokenizing them when people like you are out here saying you go to workplaces to see if they're treated right? Of course they're going to try and push them in the forefront because they want to try and make themselves look good. People like this woman are the reason companies do what they do. They know there's a market for it and they push that market out. I don't even know what the confusion is as to why there's not many people of color, as they call them, when they're in a majority white country. If you understand basic math, that would be the case. For instance, if you were to go to China, you're not going to meet many black people in the workplace or even white people in the workplace. It's going to be majority Chinese people. It's simple common sense, but for some reason these woke people don't know what common sense is.
Got you for the picture on the annual report. We got you for the picture on the website. Now don't contribute. And those microaggressions are not at all insignificant. Like, people are making stereotypes and talking about how people talk, how people dress, making racial implications and comments, things that are inappropriate in the world, much less the workplace. So my job is to go in and I quantify, like I do metrics. And my company is the only company that can actually quantify diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then create a metrics-based accountability system for making sure that we close the gap, because Black people in companies all across this country and all around the world are often having a very different experience from white people in companies. And even if you just look at the organizational chart, you often have the most diversity at the bottom of the pyramid, and the higher up you go, the more white and the more male the organization becomes. That's not always happening on purpose, but that fact limits the ability of Black men and women and Hispanic men and women and queer men and women to have the opportunity to be successful, to thrive, to feed their families, and to live into their best lives. So my job is to knock down those barriers and make sure that people are having an equitable experience.
My whole analysis of how they quantify this is it's just all made up, and they just ask people how they're feeling, and more than likely with the way people are in the West, they'll just complain and say it's racism, say it's homophobic, say it's all the phobias and isms there is. That's all it is. These people make up problems as they go along, and of course they're going to include the ABCD community amongst the races. Make it make sense.
Amazing. I know truckloads of businessmen and women, but mostly men around the country, that they don't want to hire Black people. Foreigners who have come here as well, they don't like hiring Black people because the Blacks are so much trouble. They are always complaining. They show up late. They think that everything is racism. Anytime you have to correct them. And so a lot of companies don't like hiring the Blacks. And they also are concerned that when they let them go, they're going to be sued.
Before we get back into the video, I need everyone to turn on their post notifications so that you get notified whenever one of my videos come out. Like the video as much as possible, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow me on Twitter at YinkaThatGuy. Let us get back into the video.
We're being called racist, right? Because the Blacks think everything is racist. And so they are trying to avoid hiring Black people. So if you don't correct the Blacks, Why wouldn't anybody want to be bothered with them?
I find it hilarious that Jesse calls black people the black. It's absolutely hilarious. And he always says everything with a straight face, which is even more hilarious. But his whole point is true. If it's the case that you're going to hire people and then once you hire them, they're going to complain about racism, that will feed into hiring companies' biases towards certain demographics. And that's just the unfortunate reality of life. People stereotype and people have biases, and stereotypes come from somewhere.
So ascribing those particular attributes to black people only is super problematic, because you get people of all races in organizations who complain, who show up late, who don't do their job, who sue you when you mistreat them. So those are not characteristics of black people.
But it's well and alive in the black folks, though.
Well, it is well and alive in all folks. That is well and alive in all folks. Listen, I'm an organizational development specialist. I have a doctorate of management in organizational development. I'm in organizations all over the world, and I can tell you that statistically speaking, all over the world, those are management issues that show up in all races, in all genders, and in all sexual orientations. They show up across the board. And what you're describing is the conscious bias of ostensibly white people you're talking about, who don't know how to communicate with, lead, manage, or interact with black people.
Do these people not hear themselves? She goes on to complain about that's not only black people, and that's very problematic. It's very problematic with all these stupid buzzwords they love to use every single time. You hear from woke person to woke person to woke person to woke person. It's problematic, it's racist, it's homophobic. They all say the same things like robots. She goes on to complain that he grouped in black people, and then a few minutes later she groups in white people. How do you live life going like this and complain about people doing things to you, and then you do the same thing to other people? It makes no sense. But I don't expect much from these people to make sense anyway.
Across differences and inspire the kind of behavior that they're looking for. You've got to actually create a culture of intention and decide how you want people to feel and experience their day-to-day work life. And if you can't create that sense of belonging, that sense of engagement, that sense of inspiration, then you are every bit as much culpable for how people are showing up in the workplace.
But why not train the blacks how to act rather than
what you're saying right now is illegal.
Rather than putting the responsibility on the owner of the company?
No, that's what you just said is illegal.
Why is that?
You cannot train the blacks.
Why not?
That's not, you have, if you are offering training, you have to train everyone. You can't make assignments by race like that. There are laws that protect against isolating groups for purposes like that. You can't do, that's like, you can't just hire people. You can't hire people because of their race, because of their gender.
Well, no, I'm not talking about the company training them. Why don't your job, why don't you switch your role rather than putting that responsibility on the companies? Why not train the blacks how to work? How to act at work?
That is an absurd notion.
Oh, why?
Of course it's an absurd notion. You just want to continue the training of complaining and being a victim is what you really want to do. That's why it's absurd.
That is an absurd notion.
Oh, why it's hard to train them?
Jesse Lee Peterson says the most craziest things, but what he says has some truth. But anyway, that was another video, another reaction. As I usually say, if you guys enjoyed the video, like the video as much as possible, comment down below, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow me on Twitter /X @YinkaThatGuy, and I'm out.